In late 2014, the long journey towards F1 success was coming to fruition for Max Verstappen and also the Mercedes F1 team. For the latter, they'd won their first ever Constructors' Championship, and one of their two drivers would be crowned Formula One World Champion in Abu Dhabi. With one eye on their own success, Mercedes F1 Executive Director Toto Wolff and Chairman Niki Lauda kept another on rising star Max Verstappen. And small wonder, the Dutch star had left a huge impression in karting, and having moved into cars in 2014, had just finished third in the European F3 series at his first attempt. This was comparable, even better, than their current driver Lewis Hamilton had achieved before he arrived in F1 and surprised everyone in his rookie season.
Stunning start by Lewis Hamilton, up into third place. Alonso now has to get past him. What an amazingly composed start by Lewis Hamilton.
Hamilton had been supported by and loyal to Mercedes all through karting, car racing and into Formula One, debuting with Mercedes-supported McLaren. So when he announced he'd be leaving the Mercedes-AMG F1 team to drive for Ferrari in 2025, many F1 voices were blindsided. But the roots of his move lay in the minute moments which played out over the quarter of a century before Ferrari had his signature. Small butterfly effects, like Verstappen's choice to sign with Red Bull over Mercedes, put Hamilton's fate on a path towards F1's Scarlet team long before their courtship began. So much about F1's success relies on being in the right place at the right time and availability. Back in 2014, as Max Verstappen was on the doorstep of Formula One, Mercedes had two problems. Verstappen was the son of former Benetton F1 racer Jos Verstappen and his then-wife Sophie Kumpen, herself a star in karting who beat the likes of future Grand Prix winners Jarno Trulli and Heikki Kovalainen.
I even drove against Christian Horner. I don't remember because I was 14 or 15, I presume. So.
Did you beat him?
Yeah, I beat him. Yes, it was in Spain, the World Championship.
Great antecedents. But the first problem was that Verstappen Sr. had micromanaged his son's racing career from the outset, with a mixture of his own hard-won experience and tough love. Jos is nobody's fool, and had very strong ideas about how to run his son's burgeoning career.
When you're doing the same sport, you wanted him to be as good as possible. So I was trying to teach him all the things he needed to know, and to go fast, and a lot of practicing and all the tricks what it's important.
There was even a story that on one occasion, when Max had underperformed in a race and gone to pieces after being overtaken, Jos had left him behind at a service station to make his own way home. Many years later, Jos corrected that, though it remained clear that whatever he said to his son in his formative years had to be treated as gospel.
It's not only the driving what makes you good, it's all the things around it, what it's necessary to go fast and to be successful and to be good every weekend, and this is what he has to learn.
The truth is that I didn't leave him behind. I just didn't talk to him for a week. Was that too harsh? According to Max, no. He felt that my approach prepared him better for Formula One, he said.
When he makes mistakes, it will be bad publicity for him, and it will make his lives a little bit harder. But I think he knows what to do. He knows how important it is to finish the races, and I think this is what we're aiming for.
Max himself said years later, "That's exactly what I needed." Of course, sometimes I talked about why he had to be so serious and strict all the time, but now I'm grateful for him. Due to my childhood training, everything that came later in Formula 3 or in the first Formula 1 years could no longer surprise me. He gave me the hardest possible but also the best upbringing, which left me fully prepared for racing in F1. As part of his plan, Jos had always been very determined to keep Max free of links with any major teams or sponsors in order to give themselves the best possible chance when, as he firmly believed, the time would come for Max to graduate to F1. He knew from the moment he started seriously racing karts that his boy was that good. So by 2014, when Max was on the cusp of F1, Mercedes already had Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg locked into long-term F1 contracts. Rosberg had served as race driver since the 2010 revival of the Mercedes team name in F1, and Hamilton had just been enticed to the mark from McLaren. So the biggest thing they could offer Verstappen at this point was a test driving role or a supported GP2 drive. Hamilton's arrival into F1 is just as important to this story as Verstappen's, and the first threads of this chain reaction began another decade earlier. At the age of 9, at his father's Anthony's insistence, he'd approached McLaren boss Ron Dennis at the Autosport Awards dinner.
He just walked up to me at the end of the Autosport Awards and said, Mr. Dennis, I looked around, I couldn't see him, he was so small. He sort of looked down and there was this young guy.
I met Ron and I went up to him and I was very confident. I said, one day I want to drive your car or something like that. He wrote down, quote me in 9 years and I'll sort you out a deal.
But such was Hamilton's talent that their relationship began much sooner than that, as McLaren and Mercedes took a keen interest in his performances and signed him as a rising star. By 2004, he'd built on dominant karting performances and strong seasons in Formula Renault, winning the British title in 2003 with Manor Motorsport. He then graduated to F3 with them in 2004, winning a race and finishing 5th overall. By the end of that season, the first signs of strife within Hamilton's relationship with McLaren became apparent, however. After the F3 race win, Hamilton and his father were adamant that he was ready to graduate to GP2, the series one step down the ladder from F1, which was due to begin in 2005 as the replacement for Formula 3000, which itself had replaced Formula 2 in 1985. F3000 had become too expensive, and as fields dwindled from a peak of 40 cars to just 18 by 2004, the Hamiltons were determined to join the new championship, which was supported by Renault, and aimed to keep costs down by mandating single chassis and control engines and tyres for each team.
I did a year in Formula 3 with Manor Motorsport, and GP2 was about to come out in 2005. And in my mind, I was in a rush to get to Formula 1, and I was like, if I can just get to GP2, I should be able to, and win in the first year of the sport. Maybe I'll get to Formula 1 like the year after.
Crucially, however, McLaren Racing CEO Martin Whitmarsh disagreed, and their ensuing argument saw the ambitious Hamiltons released from their contract and facing the massive challenge of raising their own budget to keep racing. Hamilton actually competed in the prestigious end-of-season Bahrain F3 Super Prix race on money sourced from his then-girlfriend's father. And to their intense relief, he won that race. I did that thing with the contract because I thought they were wrong and being too ambitious, Whitmarsh said some years later. I think it taught him a lesson. When Anthony Hamilton met again with Whitmarsh, the latter was happy to reinstate the contract. Thanks to his father, the prodigal son stayed with McLaren after all. But not with Manor Motorsport. The 2004 F3 Euro Series was the apogee for that team in the junior categories, and though founders John Booth and Graham Loudon would later take Manor into F1, the 2004 F3 Euro Championship was dominated by the rival ASM team, whose drivers took a 1-2 in the championship. And the man at the helm of ASM was an affable, straight-talking Frenchman called Frédéric Vasseur. McLaren Mercedes expected to run with the best and were also providing the funding, so it was natural that Hamilton joined ASM for 2005. Whitmarsh had been right. With his greater experience, Hamilton dominated the F3 Euro Series, winning 15 of the 20 races and almost doubling his closest rival's points tally.
It's a great feeling to know that people are recognising that I have talent, that I have the ability to possibly drive in Formula 1 and make it to the top. It's a great feeling, and we're not that far away.
2005 had been a big year for ASM. Alongside Hamilton's domination, Vasseur had founded the new ART team and entered it into the new GP2 series the Hamiltons had been so eager to contest, winning the inaugural title with Nico Rosberg, the son of 1982 Formula 1 world champion Keke Rosberg, and Hamilton's karting teammate. By the end of year, things now looked set for Hamilton's move to the F1 feeder series. Whitmarsh duly agreed that, with 15 wins, he really was now sufficiently seasoned for the move to GP2, and with ASM's sister team ART at the top of GP2 already, he had a route to probable success. They had success and a good working relationship, so it was logical for Hamilton and Vasseurs' new ART team to stay together into the GP2 category. It proved a wise decision. Vasseur and Hamilton had forged an excellent relationship in the crucible of strong mutual respect, and Hamilton won the 2006 GP2 series with 5 victories.
And I just remember the great team he put together. I remember the factory feeling like a little mini Formula 1 team. The attention to details from the engineers, they were great engineers like we have in Formula 1. Young, hungry and straight out of university.
Vasseur believes Hamilton was the most talented driver ART had run up to that point, and interestingly, remembered an occasion when Hamilton had voiced a desire one day to race for Ferrari. Like many aspiring F1 racers, the lure of the red cars is often irresistible, given Ferrari's longevity and history. Their individual paths would diverge in the years to come, as both men later graduated to Formula 1, but their friendship always remained very strong, and they celebrated one another's respective achievements. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher had been busy making history with Ferrari, since joining the sport's longest established F1 team in 1996 after taking his first 2 world championships with Benetton. By 2004, he'd scored a record 7th title, and watching the German's era-defining form, Hamilton had made the comment about a Ferrari drive to Vasseur. But by the end of 2006, the F1 scenery was going through another of its periodic shifts, and a new era was about to begin. Schumacher had signalled his intent to retire, amid speculation that Ferrari boss Luca di Montezemolo wanted him to move over to make way for incoming Kimi Raikkonen, who was leaving McLaren, and reigning double world champion Fernando Alonso was leaving Renault to take the Finn's place.
I've decided together with the team that I'm going to retire from racing. It has been an exceptional, really exceptional time. What motorsport in more than 30 years has given to me. I really loved every single moment of the good and the bad ones. Those ones make life so special.
After Juan Pablo Montoya was dropped mid-season by McLaren following a collision with teammate Raikkonen in the US GP, the Hamiltons could see a seat becoming available and began a campaign to make sure it went to Lewis for 2007, as Spaniard Pedro de la Rosa did stand-in duty for the rest of that season.
And obviously when I was 16, I was thinking, okay, only 1 or 2 years and I'll be in Formula 1, and I didn't have no understanding of how long it's going to take.
But first he was reminded strongly by Whitmarsh that he still had a job to do, to win the GP2 title. This he did. And when he began testing a Formula 1 car late in 2006, he impressed.
You never know. I mean, there's been some young guys that have done phenomenal jobs in the lower categories in Formula 3 and even GP2 that just haven't been able to cut it in Formula 1, but he's just the exception. An outstanding talent.
When Ron Dennis and Martin Whitmarsh finally made the decision to make their prodigy an F1 racer for 2007, rather than keeping his fellow countryman De La Rosa, Alonso responded, "So you don't want to win the Constructors' World Championship then?" But Hamilton's form in his rookie season was a revelation, from the moment he overtook a shocked Alonso in Australia in the first corner of his first Grand Prix racing lap.
Stunning start by Lewis Hamilton, up into 3rd place. Alonso now has to get past him. What an amazingly composed start by Lewis Hamilton.
And the rookie only lost the World Championship to Raikkonen by a single point in the final race.
It's all over, Hamilton 7th. By my calculations, we win the championship by 1 point.
I'm still quite happy, if you think about it. Come from GP2, who would have thought I would be ranked number 2 in my first year of Formula 1?
He and Alonso each scored 4 wins and 109 points, but Hamilton was awarded 2nd overall, thanks to 5 second places to Alonso's 4. After intra-team friction throughout 2007, Alonso returned to Renault, and Hamilton won the first of his 7 world titles in 2008.
Lewis Hamilton, 2008 Formula 1 World Champion.
guys, I'm speechless. I'm speechless.
But after regulation changes in 2009, McLaren's performances were becoming weaker into the 2010s. Having won 9 races in his first 2 seasons, Hamilton only won 12 more in the ensuing 4, as Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull dominated an aerodynamic age in F1.
Sebastian Vettel, you are the world champion! The world champion, well done, enjoy it! You are the man!
And meanwhile, Whitmarsh's generosity in helping the Brawn team, formerly Honda, to survive into 2009 by agreeing that they could use the Mercedes engine that was hitherto exclusive to McLaren, saw Mercedes buy the Brawn team at the end of its title-winning fairy tale season. And for the first time since 1955, re-enter the sport as a full manufacturer team in the Constructors' Championship. Having raced hard against Raikkonen and his teammate Felipe Massa in 2007 and 2008, Hamilton had watched Ferrari's performance fade in 2009, and in any case, by 2010, the time wasn't right for him to consider a move to the Red Team, who were keen to sign Alonso. Jean Todt, the team principal who turned Ferrari's misery in the early 90s around into record-breaking success with Michael Schumacher, had left and handed over to his capable deputy Stefano Domenicali, but the Alonso era ultimately proved disappointing, and Mercedes non-executive director Niki Lauda had shown Hamilton what Mercedes had up their sleeve for the new turbo hybrid era of F1, which began in 2014, and once again put the emphasis on power rather than aerodynamic excellence. Ferrari's fading pace and Mercedes' gradual withdrawal from their partnership with McLaren persuaded Hamilton by 2012 that racing for the manufacturer who had powered all of his car racing career thus far made greater sense, and joined his old friend and karting rival Nico Rosberg there for 2013. Thus began Hamilton's new era, in which he won the Drivers' World Championship 6 times between 2014 and 2020, missing only 2016 when his teammate Rosberg pipped him.
Nico Rosberg, he takes the championship 34 years after his father.
The two Mercedes drivers were allowed to race each other, and apart from a couple of incidents, they generally competed cleanly with one another. But Hamilton was a formidable competitor, fast and unrelenting. And soon after Rosberg had won his title in 2016, he announced his shock decision to retire.
The dream is achieved, it's done. I'm not willing to put that sacrifice into it again next year. It's the best moment to stop.
While this new era of Mercedes dominance in F1 began, behind the scenes, the Verstappen's carefully controlled progress to F1 had been proceeding apace, and the crossroads they reached by the end of 2014 was a reflection of Jos's own experiences of the hard world of F1. He himself had shown prodigious speed when trying out a footwork in 1993, and that had impressed renowned talent spotter Ken Tyrrell mightily. But when journalists turned up for Benetton's 1994 season launch, they were surprised to see Jos in the team's overalls as third driver. The previous week, he'd still seemed on course for a similar role at McLaren, until Benetton team principal Flavio Briatore seduced him. That decision to throw his lot with Benetton may have derailed his career, because he was cast in a supporting role to Schumacher that would never, for many seasoned observers, allow him to reveal his true potential. Thus, he had been adamant that his son wouldn't have firm ties to anyone, so they could choose whichever option arose in F1. He'd always believed one would come along, and by the end of 2014, there were actually 2. Max's performance in the F3 Euro Series, where he was third overall after winning more races than anyone, confirmed the massive potential he'd shown in karting. Red Bull talent spotter Helmut Marko wanted him in F1. Fellow Austrians Niki Lauda and Toto Wolff wanted him at Mercedes. Where Mercedes already had 2 drivers, apparently signed to long-term contracts, the best they could offer Max was that testing role and a ride in GP2. Neither was good enough for Jos Verstappen nor Max, who was now becoming his own man. Marco was the man who could have been Niki Lauda before Niki Lauda. Ironically, he was just fulfilling his own significant potential in F1 in the latest BRM, when during the French GP in 1972, as he was running a highly impressive 6th, a stone thrown up by Ronnie Peterson's March penetrated his visor and blinded him in one eye. It thus fell to Lauda to become Austria's new hero after the late Jochen Rindt. And though he and Marco remained friends, their rivalry endured. Marco lost no time persuading Red Bull team principal Christian Horner that they should sign Verstappen for their junior Toro Rosso team, despite his inexperience, and thus Max jumped into the big league after just that one 2014 season in cars.
I can't believe it really, so I think the first time when I get in the car, then you really feel like, alright, this is it.
When he made his official F1 debut with Toro Rosso in FP1 during the 2014 Japanese GP, he was, at 17 years and 3 days, the youngest driver ever to run at an official F1 weekend. "2016 saw two notable promotions in Formula One. First, Lewis Hamilton's F3 Euro Series and GP2 Series team boss Fred Vasseur stepped into the paddock as team principal in the new Renault Sport team, the third iteration of Renault as a team in Formula One. Second, Red Bull had promoted Max Verstappen to their senior team in place of Daniel Kvyat, and at his first race with the team, took his maiden win.
Max Verstappen, you are a race winner. Fantastic. What a debut. Fantastic. Great job.
Thank you very much, Christian.
Ironically, it was the collision between Hamilton and Rosberg leading the race for his other prospect Mercedes that had left the door open to his first success. Wolff and Lauda were chagrined at the thought that had Mercedes foreseen Rosberg's sudden retirement, they might have been able to persuade the Verstappens to join them. Availability had set off a chain reaction of events, and the next big thing after Hamilton had slipped through their fingers. That old memory was rammed home harder still in 2021, when following a regulations change that successfully aimed to clip Mercedes' wings, Red Bull surged ahead in a dramatic finale in Abu Dhabi to deprive Hamilton of a record 8th title on the last lap of the season, and instead give Verstappen his first.
Max Verstappen, you are the world champion! The world champion!
Woo! Yes! Oh my God!
The new second ground effect turbo era, which arrived in 2022, then played perfectly into Red Bull's hands, as F1 once again became an aero formula, and the cars created by Adrian Newey and his team of designers helped Red Bull to remain the pace setter right through to the conclusion of a tight 2024 season.
The Dutch driver will retain his crown! Max Verstappen is a 4-time Formula One world champion!
Oh my God, what a season. 4 times. Thank you guys.
In 2023, Red Bull's RB19 won 21 of the 22 races, breaking McLaren's 15 out of 16 success record with their MP44 back in 1988.
Ayrton Senna becomes world champion by winning the Japanese Grand Prix.
And things had again been moving behind the scenes in F1. In July 2018, John Elkann, the grandson of Fiat giant Gianni Agnelli, succeeded Sergio Marchionne as the chairman of Ferrari. The great Lauda, a huge asset to Mercedes' philosophies, died in May 2019. And 2 years later, the long-awaited cost cap was introduced, seriously limiting the ability of teams to engineer their way out of trouble during a season. That was something at which Mercedes excelled. Their in-season development rate was phenomenal from 2014 to 2020. But as an indication of the cost cap's effect, Christian Horner admitted in 2024 that Red Bull's development budget had been slashed from $40 million to just $8 million. There had been changes at Ferrari too. Chairman John Elkann was taking a greater role in the background of Ferrari's F1 team. Mattia Binotto, who had risen from engineer to team principal over a more than 25-year career at Ferrari, had been relieved of command at the end of 2022 and replaced by Fred Vasseur, who switched over from Sauber, whom he had joined at Ferrari's behest in 2017. Mercedes had never really got a handle on ground effect and was on their back foot from the start of 2022, with a car which was unique in having a zero-pod design concept which did away with side pods in an attempt to reduce drag. As the cars porpoised and bounced horribly, Hamilton and new teammate George Russell suffered badly in the cockpit and could rarely match their rivals' pace.
It's crazy to think we're that far off the two teams that are ahead of us, but we're right with the pack behind. So we're just going to keep our head down, trying to get good results today.
But Russell won in Brazil.
George Russell, you are a Formula One race winner. Come on, team! And it's come on!
And in 2023 was generally quicker than Hamilton, who disagreed with the initial decision to stick with the zero-pod concept. Overall, he never really felt comfortable with the ground effect cars on corner entry, where he had traditionally found a lot of his speed. He spent a lot of time in 2024 reflecting on his situation, and this coincided with Mercedes' attraction to another hugely promising driver, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. The young Italian sensation had shown great potential in karts, then won the Italian F4 and ADAC F4 car racing titles in 2022, and the Formula Regional European crown in 2023. He'd been a member of the Mercedes junior team since 2019, and Mercedes' Toto Wolff saw him as the next driver in the mould of Hamilton and Verstappen. Having missed out on the latter, he was determined not to miss out and see the ambitious Antonelli head elsewhere, so he aimed for the prodigy to get an F1 ride in 2025 after a season of Formula 2, the new name for the GP2 series Hamilton had entered F1 through.
We were convinced of his talent before. It was a question of maturity, and now we are prepared to take the risk on maturity in terms of the pressure of Formula One.
But that, of course, presented a ticklish and serious problem. Just as had happened when Verstappen was available back in 2014 and 15, Wolff already had two very strong drivers. Russell clearly had what it takes and had a contract that ran until the end of 2025. Hamilton was also very quick when he got the Mercedes into its sweet spot. But Hamilton was close to 40, and when he was due to sign a new contract in August 2023, Wolff wanted the option to sign Antonelli for 2025, and thus chose to limit Hamilton to that 1+1 deal for only 2 more years, not the 3 that he wanted.
We need to look long term on the driver lineup, not in 1 year, but in 3, 5, or in 10. And with that perspective, I just wanted to keep the options open and with all the consequences that could potentially bring.
At the same time, Ferrari limited Carlos Sainz to a 1-year contract extension, where the Spaniard was seeking 2, stalling negotiations long enough for a Hamilton deal to become a possibility. Hamilton thus ironically found himself facing the very situation that Schumacher had in 2006, when Ferrari already had Massa under a long-term contract and wanted Raikkonen for 2007. Then, the media speculated wildly. Did he quit, or was he pushed, was the popular discourse, and with Mercedes' interest in Antonelli, it was now being applied to Hamilton's tenure at Mercedes. It was a slight that he felt keenly, a sign, perhaps, that his time was running out. In a more than 900-day drought from winning, Hamilton's confidence, not just in the team's direction, but his own competitiveness, was waning.
I'm definitely not fast anymore. I'm just slow and same every weekend. So car felt relatively decent. No issues, and not really much more to say.
So the thought about no longer being wanted by the team to which he had given so much and with whom he had achieved so much must have hurt deeply. All through this period of self-reflection, John Elkann began making ever stronger overtures to Hamilton to join Ferrari as Charles Leclerc's teammate. and the presence of Fred Vasseur was a major attraction for him. They knew one another very well, had that huge trust and mutual respect, and had worked together very successfully all those years before.
He's coming with his own experience, his own exigence, his own background, and this will be helpful for the team, for the development of the team. It will be helpful for Charles, it will be helpful for the engineers. I know him very well on the determination and the focus, and it will be a good step forward.
Vasseur had said he likes working with champions. Everyone could see the benefits that hiring Schumacher had brought over the years, and neither Leclerc nor Sainz, very fast though they were, had yet to demonstrate the consistency that wins titles. Vasseur was all too well aware of what Hamilton must have been feeling, and that he could be available if he chose to trigger an escape clause in his Mercedes contract. Ferrari can be a hugely demanding environment in which to be a newcomer, especially this late in a career, but Hamilton eventually responded to the writing he could so clearly see on the wall at Mercedes by signing to join the Scuderia, and the announcement shocked the F1 family in January 2024. Shock turned to absolute fever as 2025 came around. The first images of Hamilton at Ferrari are now iconic, a tonic for the anticipation built by fans over the off-season. But these images only exist, as with any of the moments leading to them, because of the moments that came before. A chain reaction that began with a choice a Dutch teenager made, and ended with the most anticipated F1 signing in recent history. But with just one change in that chain reaction, that signing may have remained nothing more than a fantasy. Had Elkann not been as dogged in his quest to sign Hamilton? Had Mercedes been more suited to Hamilton's preferences in the ground effect era? Or had Antonelli needed more time in F2 before graduation, and Wolff had given Hamilton the extended contract he desired, the Mercedes lineup may have remained unchanged. If Vasseur had not had the nod to join Ferrari, or even not graduated to F1 at all, would the Scuderia have been as attractive to Lewis? And if Mercedes contracts had been more flexible as Verstappen was making his F1 career decisions, would Wolff's fear of missing out on Antonelli's signing have been as strong? In isolation, none of these small moments may have seemed significant in Hamilton's trajectory. Yet, taken together, they combined to propel Lewis Hamilton toward that Ferrari destiny he dreamt about with Vasseur in his junior Formula career 2 decades earlier.